Good morning everybody and welcome in to a very special episode of the LEGO Legend of Zelda Custom Set Showcase, where today, after 3 years or so to celebrate 1,000 subscribers, we are going right back to the beginning, to the first ever cancelled Zelda set that we did here on the channel in the showcase, and this is going to be, without any further ado, Z003 with 1,101 pieces. I present to you the Water Temple Dungeon Expansion. So, let me show you, one, why this set took so long, and two, why it's absolutely been worth the wait. So, as always, this set is rated for ages 8 and up with 1,101 pieces, retailing for £89.99 Great British pounds with 2 figures and four brick-built characters. It's first of all important to consider that this set actually comes in currently at the same price as the Fire Sanctuary with more pieces than that. However, this is something that will be changing. Given how early the Fire Sanctuary was made in the showcase, I was a little bit more cautious and a little bit hesitant with the budgeting. So, as part of this big celebration, I will also be just giving the Fire Sanctuary ever so slightly a couple of touch-ups just to bring it in line with the modern design language, and that will indeed infer its price going from the same price as this at $89.99 to $129.99, as well as its piece count increasing, making it the top spot, making this still the second biggest dungeon expansion. I've got a little bit of a description here, and then I promise we will open up that box and I will show you all the features I've managed to cram into this playset, and don't you worry, we'll be taking a look at it combined with most of the other dungeon sets at the end of this video. So, dive into a multi-story cavern of puzzles and play in this LEGO Zelda Dungeon Expansion based off the iconic Water Temple. Detach and rearrange rooms to challenge your friends to solve your own unique dungeons with surprises around every corner. Hunt down the Sacred Flame and Clawshot's weapons and take down Zant's forces to seize victory. Combined with Z001 and Z0010 for a mix and match dungeon experience that only gets more puzzling the more you build. Of course, this description is written as if Wave 1 was the only wave that exists, but you guys know that you can combine this with other dungeon sets like the Shadow Temple and the Arbiter's Grounds and all these other wonderful dungeons that we've done here on the channel in order to expand it even further, and again, we'll be seeing that very, very soon. So let's open up that box and you will find 10 numbered bags and one really chunky instruction manual. And opening that up as well, we'll see that bag 1 gives us our water tunic or Zora tunic link and starts off the main foundations of the central spiral room inspired by the Lakebed Temple of Twilight Princess. Bag 2 continues this boom as well as gives us our blue chew inspired by the Wind Waker. Bag 3 continues the room once again, and bag 4 finishes it off by adding the spinning staircase, which forms the major gimmick as this dungeon introduces two-story play and even more combinations for stacking rooms on top of each other. Bag 5 gives us our Zant figure, the highlight of the set, as well as starts a small room and finishes like an end segment. Gotta have these end caps for dungeons. And bag 6 finishes that room as well. Bag 7 gives us 2 more characters in the form of the Helmasaur and Shellblade, as well as builds up a small room. And bag 8 builds up an entirely separate room with some stalactites. Bag 9 builds another room yet again with some floating platforms as well as a Barry enemy. And bag 10 builds us our final section, which has the sort of pseudo-Morpheal encounter as well as our Sacred Flame of Nehru. And when it all comes together, it looks like this, but of course all these rooms are rearrangeable. As I've said many times now, and that is what gives this dungeon system its charm. But we're going to go take a deeper look at all the sets and discover just what this brings to the dungeon system and why it was so sad that this set was cancelled. So this layout is all based around that central room. Here you can see from the top that it has 3 spokes coming off the centre, and there is nothing at the front, but obviously you could place loose rooms, specifically the Gomer encounter in front of here. However, it gives us 3 main axes to work with, and different rooms can come off that in different ways. Around the back you can see it has quite a bit of depth, which sort of is missed on the front of the box, and it's a shame because it kind of hides these really fun aspects. We're going to take a room, of course, each in detail, but firstly I just want to highlight how in this default layout a lot of the rooms have an interconnection. For example, beneath the flying platforms you have sort of an abyss, meaning if you mess up the challenge of this room, you actually fall down and you sort of would have to reset. This is something that we see a lot in water temples, which are often involving 3D space and water puzzles, which of course you don't really get to replicate like a water flow adjustment here, but we can recreate the idea of falling down them and having to reclimb up, something that's definitely seen in the Flooded Farron Woods section of the Great not Deku Tree in Skyward Sword, but also, of course, in the Lakebed Temple as well. So I wanted to point that out now as well, but it doesn't mean that these platforms can't be on the ground floor. We also have this trapdoor over here in the Helmasaur room, as I'm going to dub it, which actually uses a really old mechanism to, of course, be able to be pulled back and dropped back, along with another feature you'll see in a minute. And in this case, this room drops into the water wheel room below, but you could also view it the other way around, so that if you ride the water wheel, you could push up through the ceiling in order to get back to the top layer, which I think is an interesting way of doing it. Of course, play can be interpreted in many different ways, and my job here with this set is to facilitate it in whatever form you want. Of course, let's take a look at all the individual modules here. Of course, we have the sort of 5 main ones to take a look at, 6 if you include Morphill, but we have these 2 end cap ones, as well as the 4 major rectangle rooms, the Morphill room, and then the big central one with all the connection points on multiple levels. Let's start off with the normal rectangle ones. Now, first up, the simplest, this is the Helmasaur room. This is the only room that actually cannot be stacked on top of. All 3 of the others feature a frame, so other rooms can go on top. However, this one doesn't. It can go on the top level, and of course, it can go on the flat levels, as like on the ground floor, but it can't support anything on top of it, and has a couple of interesting features. Firstly, of course, before we go any further, I'll mention the connector points. These are now all spaced exactly 8 studs apart. Yes, I went through every other of the custom dungeons and corrected the spacing so that they were in the correct place. You can see that there's a couple of pillar builds around. It's a more open room, and we've got some foliage on the floor, and the main feature here is we have a Helmasaur, who of course are an enemy that like to charge at you, and that can be recreated here, of course, by like prancing the figure on, which is on a superhero pose piece, but he can sort of be like round at Link, and you can like go bah, bah, and like battle with your figures. But there is another feature included to make that work, and that is this trapdoor here. I mentioned, of course, that it can drop you down, and you can still do that, but you can also, using a mechanism that was seen in the Lego Orient Expedition Temple of Mount Everest set, fling the axle connector up to send the trapdoor backwards, launching a figure backwards as if they've been headbutted, and you can actually get a decent spring on this as well, which is fun. So trapdoor can go down, but trapdoor can also go up, and obviously the trapdoor down feature works a lot better when there's, you know, space beneath it, but it still works well enough to show you like maybe drowning or something. We have this taller pillar over on the right, which features the Shellblade enemy on top. We'll be taking a closer look at him later, but it was just a nice extra small inclusion, and this target on the side is supposed to represent like a claw shot target. The idea being is you could do a little bit of parkouring around the room. This medium-sized pillar, again, sort of ties into the Helmasaur or whatever feature you want. Either it could be hit by bomb arrows or the Helmasaur could barge into it, but it's on a nice flicky like thing, so that if you sort of like flick it or lightly touch it, you can launch it backwards, launching say an enemy. If you could combine this with like the Wolf Link attack set or whatever, or any other sets, you could just launch a figure backwards on that, which I think is an added bit of fun. Let's move on to this next room, and this is the ground floor room, at least in the main argument, with the falling stalactites, and this is clearly based off the Lakebed Temple. It features a dark tan perimeter with 4 simple column builds holding up a support where, of course, you can drop some stalactites down into this open space. Sort of supposed to be a parkouring challenge where you can see there's lots of spiky rocks in the water. Got a couple of little bits of detail with some fallen rocks and some starfish as well. And then there's these already fallen stalactites, because they're obviously on the ceiling holding on tight, that have already fallen down to the ground. But up above there are some more threatening to impale our wonderful hero, which of course are inflict fire missiles, so that can be launched down. This room can have rooms on top of it. Depending on the room, of course, that you might not need to remove the stalactites, like if it was the swinging platforms or even actually the trapdoor room. But in some combinations you would probably have to launch these missiles in order to attach something on top, but that's a fair compromise. Anyway, let's take a look at that feature. Of course, push down on top and they fall, smacking into the river and like killing your figures or whatever you want to do with it, or perhaps even forming the platforms for you to cross on. You know, multiple different ways of plays, and this was something that I had on the original sketch model, so I was glad to include that here. And then moving on to our upstairs rooms, again, as I mentioned, these don't have to be upstairs rooms. We have this one, which is again based off Lakebed Temple, and this is based off these spinning platforms here. We've got 2 of them on chains, so they'd be super wobbly and they'd be super freestanding, and those are all attached to this Technic frame at the top, which has a little bit of rocking capability, so it can swing from side to side, but also has this gear so that you can rotate it 360, and that gear does not protrude above the frame, meaning anything can be attached on top of this module too. And the idea is, of course, parkour your way across to the other end, where perhaps there is a treasure room waiting as an end canopy. In fact, you can see those Technic holes down the bottom there, ready and waiting. Up above we have a little bit of room for some decoration, so I thought we'd use some dot tiles just to include some like, I don't know, like terracotta tiling, sort of more fancy wall work in here in light aqua and the dark azure color. And throughout the entire set we've got lots of these seaweed elements and little vines as well. So fun room. Again, this This one was in the original, really liked it. And here, of course, you can see it's spinning backwards and forwards, which is awesome. And then another room we had, which is the other like ground floor room, is the water wheel. And once again, this one could be on a ground floor or on an upper floor. Features lots of greenery hanging off the side and the same 4 simple columns. All of these rooms are the same height, meaning that they're all interchangeable. And the big feature here is the water wheel, but there's more than meets the eye. Beyond all the foliage, you can see that we have 6 wheels that sort of go into this trough. And I mentioned earlier, this can act as a bit of an elevator up to the top of the floor. Each of the bars here have a little stud placement on, so you could attach figures and other things. But one of the things that's hidden down below is a chest. And as you spin the wheel around, you'll notice that that chest moves around. So the puzzle in this room would be to sort of make the water flow so that the chest comes over to where you can reach it. Obviously no water actually flowing here, so you've got the elevator function and just rotating this to reveal a secret hidden chest, which has some gems or the claw shots. Again, with these dungeon chests, you get to choose what's inside them. We also have these 2 end cap rooms, and I think these are important because these can be positioned anywhere. Obviously, when you can combine a dungeon, they make it more useful, but it sort of acts as branches. And they also act as rewards. So when setting up your own dungeons, you have all these individual room trials, and the goal, of course, being to get past them to get to the chests, one of which could hold the claw shots, one of which can hold the included key in this set. This is one of the recommended ways you could store this chest, although it's not its only use. This is a rotating platform, hidden wall kind of deal, so like you have to get to the end and then that was awful. Let me try that again. It turns around and reveals a chest, of course, which could be inside, including the key, which could get you upstairs to deal with the main gimmick, which I promise we're coming to. But of course, this chest can be easily removed, and you could spin it around to reveal a shock encounter with Zant, as he does at the end of a lake bed temple, which I think is a perfect jump scare. So you never know whether you're getting a reward or maybe even an enemy when you set up a dungeon for your friends. The other end cap is a lot more gratuitous. This is again another simple platform which features the Sacred Flame. Now, a lot of people probably wondered why I chose the Sacred Flames as sort of the gimmicks for this first wave of dungeons. It wasn't particularly intentional. I needed something that wasn't like a dungeon item, wasn't one of the medallions because those were already taken, and I thought the pearls would be a lot more boring. So the Fire Sanctuary and the Water Temple both have 2 of the Sacred Flames, but the Fayor's Sacred Flame didn't actually appear until Wave 4 in the Koloktos Ancient System battle set. And instead the Decutry, the Gomez Nest set, Z0010, which was the other Wave 1 dungeon, actually didn't have a reward because it was too small of pocket money. So yeah, I chose the Sacred Flames. I guess it's Skyward Sword balance coming through, but it's glad to finally have the 3rd one here. And of course that's removable as well, so you could place whatever you wanted here, chest, enemy, figure, whatever. We also have the Morpher Room, which is another one of sort of the major rooms that attaches here. The big gimmick here, of course, is the tentacles. They're just a nice simple build. They're designed to be flexible so that you can fling some figures around. There's no teeth in the middle, it doesn't come out or anything, but it is of course on these cogs so that you can spin it around and so on. But I wanted to have the boss represented in some form, and I like having these big tentacle monsters. So especially for Wave 1, this was something a little bit unique back then and something that hasn't really been replicated since until more recently. So it was cool to have. It was always part of the plan to have, and I like its positioning in the main model as being on the ground floor around the back, where you actually have this removable wall. This will come up in more detail when we talk about the rearrangeability, but the idea is that you could put this wall here, blocking direct access to the Morpher Room, meaning you have to use the staircase and go in through the top and drop down like you do in the boss encounter in the game. But yeah, this is a spinny feature activated just by spinning this gear here. Here is the main room then, and let's talk about it. You've got 3 main entrances on the ground floor, one at the back, which is currently blocked, as you can see, with that platform that I just mentioned. You've got the left and the right, and then on the upstairs, after some serious reinforcing, you've got a left, a right, and a back door, which has the key door, which would be your access to the boss. So you'd have to go to the treasure chest to get the key. Obviously, it's all play, you know, the door can just open. It's not locked, but you know, it's whatever. One thing that is locked though is the staircase. Down beneath at the back here, you can see that there is a little wedge that's blocking in the staircase from rotating. And the only way to open the staircase is actually from within the Purple Onion, which is actually where you enter the boss fight in Lakebed Temple. This means that depending on how you set up your dungeon, the only rooms that are accessible to your figures at the beginning are of course the ground floor and the upper right side where it's locked. And then depending on whatever you want, you have to pass the challenges to unlock the center and therefore gain access to spinning the staircase. That's the big gimmick here. Well, the gimmick outside of already being able to stack dungeon rooms on top of each other and turn corners, which, as you remember in this wave 1, we didn't have the Shadow Temple yet, so the dungeon was still very linear. So that's why it's such a shame that this set got cancelled, is because it would have opened up so many more opportunities for the dungeon. However, we have to be glad that it got to wait, because it's definitely a better set for it, but more on that at the end. Down below, of course, you've got a couple of little details, such as mostly just foliage and damp bits, trying to make it look a very underwatery place. But let's get back to that main feature. As I mentioned earlier, here's the blockade, and in order to remove that, you as the dungeon master get to decide what opens it. Unfortunately, I did try to tie these to cogs so that it had to complete certain puzzles, but that defeats the modularity. So just use your imaginative play. Whenever you decide to pass the trials, maybe 1, 2, both of them, you can swing these out of the way, and then it falls down, and there's a little yellow knob there, and if you pull that forward, it releases the lock around the back, which means that your dungeon now can spin. And you can see here the staircase is going around all these different things, and the staircase is a nice simple build that's attached to an angle, and you can see that gives you different options. So before we take a look at the figures here, which I'm very, very excited to talk about, and then after that we will combine it with the other sets, I wanted to show that even if you just have this water temple, you can do some rearranging. So here, the first variation you have is completely linear. The back is still completely backed off. Over on the left, you can see that the flying platforms are over an abyss this time, proving they can go on the ground floor. We're making use of this transparent rod to have the Barry floating in this room, which I think looks super, super cool. And you can actually see that the water wheel is up here on the second level, along with the chest room floating above the morphophyte. Again, I kept the falling stalactite room in place, but you can see that they weren't able to be attached because there's a room on top. You've got the flame behind the morpher boss as well. The chest is in the air, showing that stuff can slightly float. You know, gravity works as it is. But the interesting thing about putting the wheel on the second level is it technically opens up the possibility for a third level as well. So before we get too much more into the super exciting stuff, which I've been waiting to show you, of course, for years now, let's talk about the figures. So first up, we have Link here in his Zora tunic. Now this was originally the Twilight Princess water tunic, more on that in a minute, but now it's been changed to the Ocarina of Time water tunic, which of course some of you might think it looks a little light. I use Lego's traditional blue here. I think the OT3D is much closer to that, whereas the original not NES, it's Nintendo 64 version, was really, really too dark. I also chose to keep the straps in the Breath of the Wild version, as in Tunic of the Time, but recolored in a sense. He's got dual molded arms, the same hairpiece that we've been using since Wave 1, as well as a similar facial expression, and this actually completes our trifecta of Ocarina tunics, which is very, very cool. Next up, of course, we have Zant, the original figure that was in here. Of course, Girahim came in Wave 1, so I made sure to have both of our wacky 3D side villains here. He's got some arm printing, some very basic torso and leg printing, and of course a brand new, newly molded for Wave 1 helmet piece, and I drew him way back in the day. Of course, all these figures you've seen before, but I just love how it came out, and it's such a big upgrade to the original, which you'll see in a minute. As for the brick built characters, the Barry made its new addition here in this remake, originally not included in the original sketch model, but looks great here. The Twilight Princess version's ugly, so I just took a lot of the modern jellyfish designs from Lego and sort of tried to merge it together. It's more based off the more colourful Ocarina of Time version, which I think is perfectly fine. I know technically this is a Twilight Princess set, but when an enemy design just suits its Lego form better in other games, you know, you're going to see it again in a minute with the chews. It just makes sense to make it have the energy of the monster, but just be slightly different. And then the other new enemy that wasn't originally included in the original was the Shellblade. This is just a simple clown piece in light bluish grey with a coral coloured cheese slate in the mouth, which I think does a wonderful job. I don't know if the mouth would stay at the right open level for this. It's a little questionable, but we'll give it a go. It's a fun inclusion, it's small, it didn't harm it, and it just adds so much more personality, so glad to have it here. Of course, there are two more. We have the Blue Chew, which you can tell very much here is a Wave 1 drawing. This guy was drawn back in the day, and of course he is the Wind Waker Chew, because no one wants the Twilight Princess Chews. You can barely even build them, and they're slugs with no eyes. It just makes sense to include the more iconic one. This one translates to Lego form so much better than literally any other Chew in the series. So here you go, Blue Chew to add to the collection. Back in Wave 1 we also had the Red Chew in Great Sea Adventure, but since then we've had two Christmas Chews, the Yellow Chew, we just had the Ice Chew in Stormway Dark as well. So we're slowly building up almost all the colours. I hope to have them all eventually. And the last figure that was originally drawn for the set, and potentially one that maybe shouldn't exist nowadays, is the Helmasaur, which is actually built using a modified minifigure torso, head, and a Star Wars helmet recoloured in dark bluish grey. I was looking for like mold solutions. And the reason we settled on this is because you can actually rip the helmet off like you can with the claw shots in games, so that you can go flying off. But yeah, interesting build, potentially not too legal, but we'll leave this one as a relic of the past. I didn't want to completely erase the Wave 1 history. So as some of you might know, the original lineup looked like this, with the Twilight Princess Zora tunic, and in the end I chose to change it because it was a little weird that I chose to make this figure and give it a completely new and exclusive mold. It kind of doesn't make sense with the rest of the design language for the CSS, so yeah, I changed the tunic, and I understand that most of you will probably be upset by that and would have preferred to have this guy in here, but that is your headcanon. I chose to get rid of him because I feel it's more in line with my design language and the choices I was making, and it feels like maybe I was being a little bit crazy at the time. So Zant is the exact same figure, he's just had a graphical upgrade because this figure is questionable. Helmasaur and Blue Chew is still included, but I changed the Link variant to just bring in things more in line, and unfortunately this does mean that the Twilight Princess Zora armor will never be appearing in a custom set. Woo! Okay, so that's the actual base set, but now of course we need to go and take a look at it combined to all of its other dungeons. Here you can see it with the West of the Wave 1 lineup, with the Fire Sanctuary box, Great Sea Adventure box, all of the friends, right? This is Wave 1 actually complete, and you have no idea how much joy it brings me to see this wave complete now after so long of it having this gaping hole, and not just a hole in the set lineup, but such a big knock-on effect on the CSS. If you'll indulge me for a second, I have to mention that this set would have expanded the dungeon system so much earlier than it would have. You have to remember that in the original lineup, the Fire Sanctuary and Goma's Lair were the only two dungeon sets released all the way until the Shadow Temple in Wave 2, meaning the dungeon was completely linear. I couldn't really show off the rearrangeable rooms. I had none of this directional changes because there are no like rooms that allow you to go backwards like this Central Water Temple module does, and there certainly wasn't any second level. So much of this dungeon builder system that the identity was built on in my original 2020 sketches was based on this water temple, and cancelling it was not only devastating for just having such a big hole in the wave, but how much it held back the dungeon system. And as a result, the dungeon system basically developed entirely off the Fire Sanctuary instead of as a trio like it was supposed to, meaning there were wild inconsistencies. So that means that while we'll be showing you these three sets here today, the Fire Temple, Water Temple, and Goma's Lair, recombined in many different ways, there'll be going to be a follow-up video here on the channel. It's sort of like a part two, keeping it all exciting, where I'm going through every single dungeon set that I've made, and I'm making sure that all the holes are in the right place, all the rooms are at the right height, so that they're all compatible with this perfected system. This is the vision I want to do. So I'm not retconning sets, I promise. I'm not really even remastering them. I'm just giving them some glam, some touch-ups, making them the most fabulous they can be, so that everything connects in the best way possible. So I hope you will come back and see that very soon. But I promised I need to show off the real potential of this line. So without any further ado, I have three combinations to show you. Let's go. So first up, the boring one. This is pretty much linear. You'll see there's a little bit around the back of the Water Temple, but starting over on the left, we have the Fire Sanctuary entrance. Generally speaking, one of the only few dungeon entrances that we have, at least the only one in Wave 1, and that flows into the Magma Lava room, which you can see is now being tiled. Yes, there's still a couple more details missing from these windows. I'm still working on the Fire Sanctuary, but I wanted to show this to you guys now rather than wait any longer. You've earned this. Well, you got me to 1,000, so thanks for that, because yeah, that's very cool. And as I said, it's so cool to fill in the gaps. Like Clock Town's coming up next, and Wave 4. And we're gonna have 100 sets soon, and they will all be complete. No more cancelled sets. Anyway, this moves into Goma's Lair, which again needs a little bit more work, but has been adjusted to fit. And then you go through the Magic Door feature, which gets you to Morpher. Of course, all these sets are gonna get updated videos eventually as well. Going into the Mogma room, which feeds into the Lake Bed rotation room. You can see here that I actually chose to place Goma as a mini boss in front. Goma's a little arena because it was a cheap set, doesn't have the same kind of structuring, so really works well as a nice dead end piece, and it fits quite well in here. Over to the right, you can see we've actually got a little bit of an upstairs using the spinny rooms. Again, I said this is the basic one, and then that flows into the rest of the Fire Sanctuary, and you've got the other two Water Temple rooms with nothing special behind them, and of course the Sacred Flame of Nehru is at the right at the back, sort of hidden. But yeah, basic stuff, really just rearrange the Water Temple rooms and slap them together. That's probably how things would have looked back in the day. You know, I hope you guys have seen the prototype models. Next up, something a little more interesting, trying to make more use of the three-dimensionality. You'll notice this time, instead of going left to right, the fire temple, the fire sanctuary boss room is actually at the back, meaning that you have to turn 90 degrees and go around the corner. This adds so much more depth. It makes this fit a more play on the floor space rather than just a massive straight line. So you'll notice that you actually come in through the fire sanctuary entrance forwards, you go over the stalactite bridge, and then Goma here is being used as a 90-degree turn. That means that this isn't actually fully attached, but I felt like it was a nice compromise. So Goma here at the right angle, going into the Helmasaur room, which flows into Morphle, which has a really cool aesthetic to it because they're completely level with no walls. Just, again, it looks so different, which I really like because it makes it feel like Morphle is less of a boss and more just like a creature that's like come up like the Mario 64 eel or something. You then have this harsh transition, admittedly, to the lava river, but then again, that is the point of this dungeon mix and matcher. It's supposed to feel like a Zelda dungeon maker, and it does. And then goes into the lakebed spinny room, where you'll notice at the very top there, we've got the Deku merchant, or the angry Deku scrub who will sell you things from Goma's nest. Instead of placed in like the Goma rooms or just loosely, I chose to place them on this upper platform because it's a dead end platform. So would be a place where like behind a bumble wall you would have a Deku merchant. So makes sense. Then if we move to the right first, you'll see that on the ground floor we have the Mogma room and the digging room, which has been flattened off and has the wheel on top, and that flows into the Goma room, which behind the crystal switch which you shoot with a slingshot is Nehru's flame. But underneath, we still keep going. If you find the key in the digging room, you can go through to the spinning platforms flying over an abyss, and then fight the Magmarmain, which is guarding a treasure chest over behind its secret door. But then, of course, we come around to the back. If you spin the staircase in this one, it doesn't really do too much. As I said, you can access the Deku Merchant, but the other door is actually a dead end because there was no support behind it. And it flows directly into the Fire Sanctuary boss room, not really making too much use of the 90-degree turn, but making amazing use of the double layered feature. Imagine what this is going to be like once we get Shadow Temple and all these other dungeon rooms in here and up to snuff. Like, that's the real video, isn't it? But we have to showcase the Water Temple too. This one's probably the craziest one. So, again, you making use of all three dimensions and the verticality too. So coming in again through the Fire Sanctuary entrance, you enter into the Helmasaur room. I said nothing can be stacked on top of this, but in this case it works because the Goma room above it is actually being supported by the Mogma room, and it's just hanging over a little bit. Again, getting a little crazy. Obviously they wouldn't officially advertise something like this because it's not supported, but this is the kind of crazy combinations you can get with this system now that it's all modularized. Almost modularized. The Fire Sanctuary rooms is still 12 studs deep, but it's fine, we'll live. Anyway, and the Mogma room flows through into the central room, where of course this time if you rotate the staircase, you can go well to the left, to the back, or to the right, or all upstairs. And on the left you've got the spinning room, which is above, meaning you could fall down to the Mogma room again and have to go back around. You've got Goma's little room, which again leads to the secret Nehru's flame. I like that being behind there. I think that's fun because it's like a secret hidden door. Over on the right side, you've got the water wheel, which you have to find a way to get past by like climbing over it, which leads you to the Goma encounter and a treasure chest down there. But up above, you've got the lava platform to break through the wall, which is another way to get down there. Unfortunately, there's not like another end cap. I would have liked to have put like Nehru's sacred flame there, but it needed to be over the other side. Anyway, my point is more sets you get more end caps, more like treasure rewards. Unfortunately, this bombable wall is a bit useless. Maybe put a Deku Scrub there. But anyway, going backwards this time, on the bottom level we have the Magmarmain, and on top of the Magmarmain we have two more Water Temple rooms, being the stalactites leading to the Morpher encounter. Again, maybe another mini boss, giving you access to like more keys, more doors. And then at the back we have the Fire Sanctuary, which I do really like being back there. But I'm beyond excited to just see the potential this brings and the chaos it brings. Like, yeah, it's a bit of a jumbled mess, you know, but like it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be like this 2021 modular Hogwarts castle system. By the way, this was designed before the 2021 modular Hogwarts castle system, so I didn't inspired by that. I was inspired by more classical sets. But anyway, what this gets me really excited for is to get all the sets in one room. Specifically the dungeons. So, as I mentioned, I've said it excessively, and this video is getting way too long, but this is a celebration, you know. I'm going to be leveling out the Fire Sanctuary and giving it a glam up. I'm going to be making maybe one adjustment to Goma. It's not that serious. We're going to be adding some texture and standardizing the Shadow Temple to make sure that it can be included in it, because that would be amazing if we could get Shadow Temple rooms underneath and above this Water Temple double layer. Into Wave 3, I'm going to be adjusting the Shrine Builder and I can't really like make those compatible with the up and down. It's sort of a different concept, but we'll do my best to make sure that you can combine it in different ways. Unfortunately, it won't have the up and like the upstairs feature, but you could put pieces and bits floating because you do have the flying platforms. Oh, that's going to be really cool, actually. Oh, the potential, it's coming to me. Tower of the Gods will also be included, but again, it's not really a dungeon set. And then, of course, the Wave 4 ones as well. We have all of those now. So we have the Volvagia Bass Battle, the One Room from Ancient Machines Battle Pack. We have the Spirit Temple Gauntlet, and Battle for the Sacred Flame as well, which will all be made compatible and all be included. Oh, as well as Arbiter's Grounds as well. And I'm hoping that so many of these can stack. I'm really, really hoping to get as many of them airborne as possible, at least in one variation. I've got to try so many combinations. It's going to be great. But back to the set at hand. This was the long-awaited Z003, the Water Temple, the first cancelled set. Hopefully I've explained everything and made it sense, and I really do hope that it was worth the wait. I've put everything I can into making this set everything I wanted it to be back in the day, and I hope that despite it not being like a modern game-based set and it taking inspiration from all over the place, that it has this charm, this play features. Now obviously it was cancelled for a reason, and that was because I was a little bit over ambitious. I talked briefly about wanting to have gear racks going to this central thing so the staircase was actually locked, but in the end, locking it behind your imagination and giving you the freedom to rearrange and put things in different places and tell the stories you want was more important to me. And yes, I did go slightly over budget, hence the piece count, but I do think that Fire Sanctuary was undervalued back in its day, like only having about the same piece count, about like 1058 or something, for 89 was a little ridiculous. It should have been a 120 flagship set like all of the other main like IP launches. Anyway, it was chaos, but I'm happy with this now, and I'm so happy that it gets to join the collection and fill in that gap in the first row. It now means that every Zelda set from 1 through 49 is complete, with the next one missing being Clocktown. Obviously, for the time being, we're going to be going back to a Tears of the Kingdom sets to finish those up, but I'm hard at work finishing up Clocktown, or trying to, as well as the missing Wave 4 sets. So the dream is that before too long, we'll have sets 1 through 90 already complete, and then before too much longer, sets 1 through 100, and there's so much more to come. So, of course, let me know all your feedbacks down below. I apologize if I've missed anything, and I'm sorry this got so long, but thank you all so much for making this happen, because I couldn't have done it without you. It was the 1000 sub reward, and here's to a bright future for the CSS, the channel, and the dungeon builder system. And I hope to see you next week for another video, very soon for the next Tears of the Kingdom custom set, and not too long before we get all of these dungeons in action and my baby, this dungeon builder system that I've been dreaming up since the first custom set, finally reaches its master form. It's exciting times, and thank you very much for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you again very soon. Bye bye.